Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the wide release of Fast 10, which is projected to have a $300 million opening weekend. Of course, this film is projected to be a much bigger hit internationally than locally in the domestic market, but the big question, of course, is going to be, is this film going to have this big of an opening? Where is this film going to compare to the other Fast and Furious movies? And ultimately, where does Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 fit into this narrative? Because that film had a pretty amazing 48% hold this past weekend. Some people have said that that is not really all that impressive, that they suspect that the film's going to have a massive drop-off this weekend, but the projections right now are actually looking still pretty darn good for that film, and so we'll talk about that and where the film currently is box office wise. Before going any further though, please make sure to smash that like button, slap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, smash the rumble button as well. Also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. Alright, so Fast 10, as you can see, the headline from Deadline, from Tony and Nance. Good old Tony and Nance from Deadline, $300 million opening weekend. It goes on to say that franchise is eyeing an offshore start of $235 million and a $60 million domestic. As you can see right off the bat, that is a quite a big disparity there, right? $60 million domestic versus $235 million internationally. That just goes to show you how much of an international property this is. Personally, I am a big fan of Fast and Furious 1 through 6. After that, it pretty much falls off a cliff for me. And I know that there are still, though, a lot of people out there in the world who are still pretty big fans of the actual film itself. As it says right there, that would get Fast 10 to $295 million worldwide, making it the third best global start for a Fast and Furious movie after 2017's Fate of the Furious and 2015's Furious 7. So as you can see, we are seeing a bit of a decline in the overall box office numbers for this movie, right? You're seeing there with their Fate of the Furious 8. They're not, of course, mentioning the film that came out during the pandemic time back in 2021, which would have been Fast and Furious 9. That had a much smaller global opening, but also I don't even have the reporting for the global opening for that because it did have such a staggered and weird start because of all the different countries having all the different lockdown measures that, of course, negatively impacted so many people, especially the children of our world. And that's nothing to be ashamed about, it says, despite any smackings of franchise fatigue. But I think we can pretty much understand that there's going to be franchise fatigue. There's been now 10, right? This film coming out today. There's now been 10 of these movies. And as I've said, I got fatigue after 6. Right? 6, I was like, hey, I'm all good for these things. These things are fun. These things are silly, stupid fun. And then by 7, it got so stupid it wasn't fun anymore. And so this thing is still continuing on, and there are still people that find enjoyment. Shout out to J. Alex McCarthy Jr., who is a huge fan of this franchise, but me, not so much anymore. And I know that a lot of other people feel the same way, and I know a lot of people have never watched a single Fast and Furious movie, and they don't quite get it. But again, the international market shows us that there is still... I know, River! I know! She doesn't quite understand Willow is a big fan of it. River, not so much. So it's a little bit of a fight here in the house. But it goes on to talk about how Rogue One: A Star Wars Story had a $290 million worldwide opening 2016, Justice League $278 million, and Twilight Saga: New Moon $274 million. So this film is going to be up there with some other films. I know, River. I know it's upsetting. I get it. But also remember that those numbers are not adjusted for inflation, and that makes a pretty big difference. This film is also expected to do quite well in China. That's right. Just another reminder that this is a Universal production, and Universal and Disney, amongst many others, still do workings with the Chinese Communist Party and give them millions upon millions of dollars, saying that 25% of those box office receipts actually go to the studio, and that is a pretty big deal. Going and looking over at Box Office Pro, and again, their metrics are usually a little bit different. They're projecting Fast 10 to make around $65.4 million domestically, so as you can see, a little bit of a higher estimate there for Box Office Pro, and that tends to be the case, but I think that's a pretty good metric for us to look at, right? So $60 million is kind of the low end for Fast 10 right now, according to Deadline, and then $65 million is the low end, or rather the average, I should say, for Fast 10. They have the low end around $58 million. They give a range, 58 to 73 is what they project the film is actually going to do. So hey, strong opening weekend internationally, box office wise, and locally, not all that impressive. And again, hard for us to really compare as far as the previous film of the franchise franchise because that one was impacted by the pandemic. The biggest problem that Fast 10 has going for it, though, is its massive budget. Yes, you see that correctly. The budget for Fast 10 has been reported as being as high as $340 million. Just to give you a bit of a context here, that puts the film almost $100 million over what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 cost to make. And if you've seen Guardians 3, you know there is a ton of CGI, a ton of visual effects, and those are very, very costly. So I'm looking at Fast 10 and thinking, what in the world are they spending? This is a film that's supposed to be about car chases and cars and family. What's costing $340 million? Obviously, there's special effects. Obviously, they're going on location and things like that, but I don't know. I don't quite understand how and why they spend so much money on these movies, but that means that at a low-end estimate, this film needs to make around $850 million, probably upwards of $1 billion worldwide just to be able to break even, right? That's pretty much the range on the break even for this movie is $850 to $1 billion. So yeah, let's just say this film has to basically become $1 billion film if it has any hope of being a guaranteed box office success. And hey, if any franchise could do it, if any film could do it, it would not surprise me if it was Fast and Furious, especially with this massive opening in the international market. Again, box office wise, domestically, this film is not going to really, surprise all that many people, I personally think, especially since you are entering into the summer movie season. There's going to be a lot of competition over the next several weeks, but ultimately this film internationally I think is going to be totally fine, and that's of course going to make the big question is how much money is this film actually going to make, seeing that these films and these studios tend to make less money from international markets than versus domestic markets, and when you have this much disparity between them, that actually becomes a factor. When you have other films where there's more of an even split between those two markets, again, sometimes it's not really as much of a factor because of the way that splits work, especially in the opening weeks in the domestic market, where studios get a lot more upfront versus later on down the road. But again, that is still going to be a giant question mark as far as profitability is concerned. But we're going to go by the numbers as they stand and as they are being reported. But right now, Fast 10 actually has opened with $18 million on its first day of release in China and Korea. So we're going to be following those numbers as well as it says right there. Estimated $17.4 million there. In China, as it's being mentioned there. And again, we'll be following this. It also talks about how it made $1 million in Korea. And by the way, I believe that $1 million is actually higher than the opening day numbers for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Once again, kind of adding to why I think people were over-projecting that film, not only in the Korean market, but also in the Japanese market. But hey, that film is also, Fast 10 is getting a day-and-date release in those countries, and I think that's also a major factor that is going to end up helping it out. Now, of course, the big question is going to be, hey, where is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 going to hand on this, right? It had a very, very strong 48% hold from the previous week, beating out the previous Guardians films and beating out a lot of Marvel films, especially more recently. A lot of the Marvel films more recently have had massive opening weekends and then have had massive drops. Guardians 3 had a pretty decent opening weekend and an incredibly strong hold. So again, one of the better performing of the films. And so there's a lot of reasons for Disney and Marvel to be very happy with these numbers. And hey, the happiness continues if these numbers indeed continue to hold. Right now, Box Office Pro is projecting it to hold 47%. So they're actually projecting it to have an even stronger hold than the previous week, projecting the film to make $32.9 million, meaning this film is going to easily make $350 million, and has even a chance of getting upwards of $400 million domestically when everything is said and done. I think competition might keep it from getting to that point, but still, I would say $350 million is probably a pretty good target for this film to be able to hit. Right now, they're projecting it to be around $29 to $35 million when everything is said and done. But hey, kudos to them for making a very impressive movie. Super Mario Brothers movie is also having a very strong hold, 18%. So an 18% hold there. Expected to balloon its domestic totals to $549.8 million. Again, very, very impressive numbers there for the Super Mario Brothers movie, and we'll continue to track those numbers, especially in Japan and Korea, because I do think that there is a lot more to that story, and I think that there's a lot more interesting things going on in that story than other places. Going over to Deadline, though, talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and where they're saying the film's going to see, it says, where does this leave Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 after a great second weekend hold of 48%, best of an MCU title post-pandemic? I hate how they keep using that. They could literally just use franchise best, because the previous Guardians films, according to their own reporting, dropped 55% each on their second weekend. I don't know why they have to continue to bring up the whole post-pandemic nonsense. Anyway, the third weekend for James Gunn-directed threequel is estimated to be down 50% at $31 million. So they're right now projecting for a 50% drop at $31 million. Box Office Pro is bringing in $32.9 million, 47%. So either way, it's looking like this movie, Guardians 3, is going to drop somewhere between 48 and 50% in its third week. That's just, again, very, very impressive numbers there. This is a movie that at this point in time is just, it's really doing well. It's very hard for me to recognize and realize how anyone is saying that this film is not doing well. Again, it's been out for just 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, and it's made $500 million. You keep on adding these numbers together, and if you see these types of holds, not just domestically, but you also see some decent holds internationally, and obviously, internationally, we can see the massive opening weekend for Fast 10 is definitely going to gobble up a lot of those seats and gobble up a lot of those ticket sales, but still, I think that we could definitely look and see the positive word of mouth on this movie is going to help it in certain respects. It's definitely helping it in the domestic marketplace. And so I would not be surprised to see this film get upwards of $650 million by the end of this weekend. And that would already be putting it into the discussion of being, darn close to passing the end totals of Thor 4 and having a very good chance of still getting to that $800 to $900 million range. And again, if these types of holds especially continue, and as you can see right now, it's doing historically, again, pretty much average numbers here in the domestic marketplace. And so, hey, these are very impressive numbers. And for anyone to say otherwise, I think it's just, I don't think it's being genuine. Again, I understand where some people are coming from. I think some people are looking at this saying, hey, we typically see Marvel films have massive drop-offs. We're not seeing that with this one, but the box office opening was really not all that impressive compared to other box office openings to other Marvel movies. But also, again, I think that you have to take those things as being kind of very similar, right? If you have a very low opening, but then you have very strong holds, you can end up making as much, if not more, right? Holds are really the name of the game. And having a good opening weekend, having a good, strong, solid opening weekend, as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had, right? It wasn't as massive as some other releases, but it was still a solid opening nonetheless. Again, this film is very much bound to hitting a financial success. It still does not prove that the MCU is any positive state because Guardians is kind of its own self-contained story, especially Guardians 3. Right? For those who have seen it, you know that this is very much focused just on the Guardians, not really focused on any other external MCU properties, not trying to build up anything for any future MCU titles. And so really, in a lot of ways, it's almost not even a part of this new phase because it's just trying to tell the story of this, very, very small part of the overall universe. And it's going to be interesting to see where the film ends up when all is said and done. But those are the numbers as they stand. What do you think? Do you think Fast 10 is going to have a bigger than expected domestic? I think some people might actually be underplaying Fast 10 because, again, I think a lot of the numbers that are being used right now are being based upon the 2021 numbers are being based upon the numbers that came out because of the pandemic for Fast 9. And I think that those numbers are a bit disingenuous because, of course, we know what the pandemic did. This film, Fast 9, right, the Fast and Furious franchise, during the pandemic, it was one of the best performing movies. And I think that showed a lot of people, hey, people are actually willing to go to a movie if it's either, one, a film that looks really good, or two, a film that is a part of a franchise that still has a lot of love behind it. And there's no denying that if you look at the numbers for the Fast and Furious franchise, they've got at least $2 or $3 billion films under their belt in the 10 releases now. Hey, is there a chance for the Fast 10 movie to get $1 billion? There's definitely a chance. It needs to, if it's going to break even, essentially, but we'll have to wait and see on those numbers. Also, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, what do y'all think about those numbers? Do you think we're going to continue to see this film have very, very, very strong holds? I don't think $1 billion is really in play for this movie. If any film was going to in the MCU in the next few years, this would be the last chance for them to do so. We're not quite seeing those numbers at this point, but hey, if these types of drops continue, not only domestically, but also internationally, then we might have that coming into the overall discussion itself. So let me know your thoughts about that. Also, Super Mario Brothers movie, again, right now looking like it's going to get close to that $1.3 billion worldwide number. And again, I think that this film probably ending around 1.3, maybe $1.4 billion max because of it not performing nearly as well in Japan and Korea. But again, obviously, story is still out. The jury is still out in those two countries as well. I would say jury is still out more so in Japan than it is in Korea, where it's just not performing to any real massive degree. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, like that fire button, obviously smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed feast of the Ascension. That's right. Even though many dioceses across the world are going to be transferring it to Sunday, it is the Feast of the Ascension of our Lord. Pentecost is coming very quickly. Anyway, you guys are great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my patrons at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off with my patrons over on Patreon: Father Luca Illich, Hymir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, who you can check out over at his YouTube channel, Orange Chat Reviews, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel of Eagle Rider, and Miss Modern Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. Also to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, check him out over on Twitch, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my local supporters, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. Thank y'all very much for supporting me at that Keep It the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shout out at the end of every video and live stream, make sure to check out the top link in the video description in order to get access to that. Also, there's a level where you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with my friend John the Flip Flickinger, and also to a giveaways channel on my Discord where you get access to the giveaways of various 4K titles, including right now I've got a 4K Steelbook for Training Day. I got the 7th Seal from Criterion, Plane Trains Automobiles, Kubo and the Two Strings, They Live, Train to Busan, tons of others every single week, every single week. I'm going to stick by that. We're doing this live. I just recently gave away the 3 Steelbook collection for John Wick franchise, the amazing Stash Book Collection version. So if you want to have access to various things like that, hey, check out that top link in the video description below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.